Have you ever really thought about what happens when a forest gets cut down? I mean, it's so much more than just a bunch of trees disappearing. It's like tipping over the first domino in a massive, complex line. That one push can set off a chain reaction that changes, well, pretty much everything, from the dirt under our feet to the actual air we breathe. Today, we're going to follow that chain and see just how far it goes. So, yeah, what really happens when an entire forest just vanishes? We're going to trace that fallout, piece by piece, domino by domino. And what you'll see is how a single action in one specific place can spark a crisis that ripples across the entire planet. It's a story that really shows you just how fragile and incredibly interconnected our world is. Okay, but before we dive into what goes wrong, we kind of need to appreciate what's going right. Think about our planet for a second. It's like it's running on this incredibly complex and delicate operating system, right? A beautiful balance of countless interconnected parts that, together, make all life possible. And it all starts right here, in what scientists call the biosphere. Now, that sounds like a super technical term, but all it really means is this impossibly thin, precious layer of our planet where the air, the water, and the land all meet up. That's it. It's the stage where the entire drama of life unfolds. And what's on that stage? Well, that's biodiversity, the absolutely staggering variety of life. We're talking about everything from the plants, which we call flora, to all the animals, the fauna. And this variety isn't just nice to look at. It's the actual engine that keeps our planet healthy and running. So all of this life gets organized into these communities we call ecosystems. And in an ecosystem, all the living things are in this constant dance with the non-living things, like the air, the water, the soil. They all depend on each other to survive. And a forest? A forest is a perfect, incredibly complex, and absolutely vital example of one of these ecosystems. But what happens when we come along and just push over that first critical domino? In our story, that big push is deforestation. And this is the moment where that delicate balance really starts to come apart. You see, deforestation isn't just about cutting down a whole lot of trees. It's about fundamentally changing what that land is for, turning it into farms or cities or industrial parks. And that transformation often comes with some really devastating and totally unintended consequences. So what's driving all this? Well, it's a whole web of human needs and demands. We clear land for agriculture to feed everyone. We need space for growing cities and houses. We dig into the earth for mining. And on top of all that, you've got illegal logging and the ever-growing threat of forest fires. You can see how our expanding human footprint is really at the heart of it. All right, so the first domino is down. Now let's watch the chain reaction really get going. This is the part where a problem that starts in one local spot begins to have massive global effects. It all starts with the ground itself. When you cut down the trees, you expose that rich, fertile topsoil to the elements. With no tree roots to hold it in place, it just erodes, it washes away. This in turn messes with local rainfall patterns, which leads to drought. And eventually, the land just loses its ability to grow anything. A lush forest literally turns into a desert. We call this process desertification. I'm sure you've all heard this quote before, right? And it's honestly the perfect way to think about the next domino to fall. Because the impact of deforestation doesn't just stay on the ground. Nope, it rises right up into the very air we breathe. So our planet has this amazing natural heating system. The atmosphere basically works like a blanket, trapping some of the sun's heat using gases like carbon dioxide. This is the greenhouse effect, and it's absolutely essential for life. Without it, Earth would just be a frozen rock. But here's the catch. Forests are like giant sponges for CO2. So when we chop them down, we're not just getting rid of the sponge. We're also often burning the trees, which releases all that carbon they've stored up for years. This makes that atmospheric blanket thicker, and it starts to trap too much heat. And what's the result of that thicker, heavier blanket? The whole planet's average temperature starts to rise. Now, an increase of 1 or 2 or even 3 degrees might not sound like a lot, but it is a huge deal. It's enough to completely alter climate patterns, melt polar ice caps, and change our world in profound ways. This is global warming. And that brings us to the last and maybe the most heartbreaking domino of all. When the forests disappear, so do the homes for countless species. Animals that are endemic, which just means they live in that one specific place and nowhere else on Earth, they get hit first. Their populations shrink, they become endangered, and then they can become extinct. gone. Forever. Okay, I know that's a pretty bleak picture, but this chain reaction isn't unstoppable. We can step in. We can intervene. And that's where conservation comes into the story. It's our active effort to protect our planet and restore that balance. Now, when it comes to conservation, there are two main game plans. The first is in situ, which basically means protecting species right where they belong, out in their natural homes. The other is ex situ, which is the backup plan, protecting them outside of their natural habitat in places like zoos or seed banks, especially when their home isn't safe anymore. So for that in situ, on-site protection, we create these protected areas, but they're not all the same. For instance, you have a massive biosphere reserve, which has this huge goal of protecting both the biodiversity and the local human cultures. Then you have national parks, which tend to have stricter rules and are focused on preserving specific plants, animals, or history. And then wildlife sanctuaries are even more specific, totally zeroed in on protecting animal populations. Different tools for different jobs. So what does all this look like in practice? Well, we can do reforestation, which is replanting trees right where a forest used to be. Or we can do afforestation, which is planting a whole new forest in a new area. On the ex situ side, we use zoos and botanical gardens as safe havens. And honestly, it even boils down to our everyday choices. Just recycling reduces the pressure to go out and exploit new land in the first place. But the big question is, does any of this actually work? Can we really reverse this kind of damage? Well, let's look at a really powerful story of hope that proves that, yes, we absolutely can. Just take a look at this. Back in the 1970s, the tiger population in India had crashed. I mean, it was at a critically low point, mostly because of hunting and habitat loss. The country's national animal was literally on the verge of disappearing. But then, India launched this massive conservation effort called Project Tiger. Hunting was banned completely, and they created these huge protected reserves. And the result? It was nothing short of incredible. The tiger population started to make a serious comeback. It is just powerful, undeniable proof that when we focus and we act with determination, we really can turn the tide. So we end with this thought. We've seen the huge, cascading, negative impact of destruction. But that means the reverse has to be true too. Every act of conservation, every single tree that gets planted, starts its own positive chain reaction. And that's a pretty powerful reminder of the impact every single one of us can have.